Hey, 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 happy Tuesday. Come on in, pull up a chair. The Gaming Gang Dispatch is in the air. Howdy, gang, and welcome once again to the Duct Tape Studios. I'm Jeff McAleer, your host here at the Gaming Gang Dispatch. Brought to you by, amazingly enough, Roll for Combat and their Living Legends Kickstarter, which we are going to talk about in just a little bit, as well as thegaminggang.com, of which I happen to be the founder and editor-in-chief. So welcome aboard, everybody. Tonight is Tuesday, March 18th, 2025. This is a live stream 1166. If you're not overly familiar with the show, let me point out, super casual around here. Normally, we'll hang out, we'll talk about the tabletop gaming news, and then I might pontificate about a topic related to our hobby, or maybe I will share a first look at a game. Every once in a while, I might even do a live review on the Dispatch. So tonight's going to be a little bit different. Tonight, we are going to dive on in, and we will be taking a first look at the Old Margreve from my good friends over at Kobold Press. This is for Tales of the Valiant, as well as Dungeons and Dragons. Not that that's a problem. Just joking. Tales of the Valiant, though, yes. So we are going to dive on into that. There will not be a news segment tonight because I have an announcement I'm going to be making. We are going to get to that in just a few moments, but the future of the Gaming Gang is going to change vastly. There's absolutely no way to get around it. But I'll talk about that in just a bit. First of all, let's talk about our sponsors. Yes, our friends over at Roll for Combat are sponsoring us because they want you to know more about the Living Legends Kickstarter. And there's a pretty cool and funny video. So let's take a peek.
No. There's nothing else to roleplay as in my tabletop games. I've been everything imaginable. A dwarf, a halfling, an elf, a sexy elf.
Hey, Jeff.
What?
Yeah.
What is it, Vampire Cop?
I know you're looking to put weird little monsters into your game. Well, look no further. Battle Zoo Ancestries Living Legends has 14 unique ancestries for your Pathfinder 2E or D&D 5th edition games.
Radical!
Like Swarmblood, a creature made of hundreds of other little creatures. Gargoyles, where you can disguise as an ordinary statue, but also become a warrior of the night.
Look at them all. Angels, devils, sphinxes, evil eyes. I love them and I will die for them.
And if you really want to go full sicko mode, you can be a fusion and play as an ancestry that combines multiple characters in one, like a chimera, two-headed giant, or even a hydra. You could either share this character with other players or control it all by yourself.
I could have the power of both a low-level internet personality
and a low-budget, sexy horror action movie? Visit Kickstarter.rollforcombat.com
to get Battle Zoo Ancestries Living Legends. which includes in-depth information about each creature's culture, society, and history. You also get hundreds of digital tokens and illustrations that work with any VTT. Go get your hands on all these little freaks today.
Hey, can I join you? Sure, we can be a chimera now.
No!
I thought that was amazing that they got Bryan Cranston to star in their Kickstarter video. Absolutely amazing. Absolutely amazing. You know, leave it to Roll for Combat. They always come up with these oddball Kickstarter videos, but they do catch your attention. They really, really do. So there is that. So this Kickstarter is running through April 11th. There is loads and loads going on. There are the animated virtual tabletop tokens. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff. I know if you get on board quickly enough, I think you can still get the Dragon Goblet that they were offering. You know how Battlezoo releases usually are I guess I should say Battlezoo Ancestry, because I guess that's the real title to it. But you know how these always are from Roll for Combat. There's always extra goodies that are in the mix. So you always get your money's worth. Speaking of money, if you would like to back this Kickstarter, you can grab the hardcover in the flavor of your choice. Yes, of course, either Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons with PDF and the Foundry module, which is also going to include all those animated tokens and so forth, for a $99 pledge. If you want to just grab the hardcover with PDF, you can do so for a $60 pledge. And if you want just the PDF, you can do that for a $39 pledge. And that is through April 11th. Now, the PDFs will be expected in July. I don't know if the other like animated tokens and things like that, I think it's just the PDF. But the rest should follow this August. So something else that we are very familiar with Roll for Combat is that we do see pretty quick turnarounds on those crowdfunding projects. Very nice. And yes, for the duration of this Kickstarter, they are sponsoring the Dispatch. Yes. All righty then. So I should mention that this is a live stream. So that also means chat is available if you happen to be taking part. Now, I will mention that you have to be a subscriber to the channel and have to have been a subscriber to the channel for at least 10 whole minutes. Practically a lifetime for some folks out there. But if you want to say howdy, maybe you got a question, comment, by all means, chime in. I will do my very best to respond. First out the gate tonight is Semper Buffo. Wallona's Cave is with us, as is our good friend of the show, the Madman. Keith Ulu's here, Gluin RX, Sean O'Donnell, Kevin R. Smith, W. Forge, James Squarebush. Might be a first-time visit in chat for James. That's not ringing a bell. Mike is here, as is Bradley Thorpe, Pete Stracklich, LJ Costanzo. I always pause when I'm trying to pronounce that last name, because I don't want to be, I mean, you can pronounce it. It's not like some nicknames that pop up and it's sort of like, oh man, how do I pronounce it? I guess I'll take a shot. I mean, that's relatively easy if you're paying attention. Chris Lundgren is chiming on in with Buddy, no doubt his cockatiel. And yes, Stephen from Roll for Combat is also joining us to make sure that I got everything right. Yes, I resorted to the video today more than, doing my usual, read through of stuff. I have an excuse. I'll tell you. Don't worry. Kathy Evans is also hanging with the gang. I think I've said hello to everybody. Hope you've brought enough for everyone. All right. So, LJ says Anglified, it's like the name Stan. Or if you were Polish, isn't Stanley Stasiu? I had a friend in high school who was Polish, and we always called him Stasiu. So Chris Leonard points out that Buddy the Cockatiel looked up when I said his name. So that means he looked up again. And Anthony Simone is with us. Welcome, everybody. Okay, so if you follow me on social media, so if you follow me on X or Blue Sky, talk about two completely opposite spectrums. I don't know how long I'm going to be on X, but I got a good number of followers there. Yeah. And of course, over on Facebook, I mentioned today that I was going to have to make an announcement about how the gaming gang's going to be different. Not right this second. Okay, so I'll tell you what happened. Because I said I had some bad news over the weekend, which is going to change the way things happen around here. So if you follow the gaming gang, you know that I drive an ancient vehicle. A 1994 Chevy Cavalier that's only got 51,000 miles on it, though. And the body's actually in pretty good shape and everything. And it was my grandfather's out in Arizona. And, we've put money into it, fixing this, fixing that, replacing this, replacing that. We did a water pump, stuff like that. The brakes, the usual. Well, I mean, it's a 30-year-old vehicle, right? You're going to do stuff to it. So anyways, Friday, which once again, if you follow the gaming gang dispatch, you know that I usually take Fridays off from doing anything related to the show. So I went and did my shopping. I do the grocery shopping. We're always running out to the grocery store for something, but I do the majority of the grocery shopping on Fridays. So I go to the Walmart that I normally go to, and the car was having some problems as far as the starter. It seemed like there was a dead spot in the starter. So sometimes it wouldn't start. And then if you waited a little bit, it would start. Or if we for whatever reason, if we put the charger on the battery, even though it was a new battery, left it overnight, the car would normally start. Well, it didn't. And of course, I'm nowhere near my house. And I'm like, oh no. So I spent, get ready, 4.5 hours sitting in the Walmart parking lot. Because first I thought, oh, is it the battery? And so I go in and I bought one of those emergency jump starters that was already pre-charged, although I don't think it was charged more than if you wanted to plug your phone into it charged. That didn't work. Somebody actually stopped by and they said, hey, are you okay? Because I had the hood up and that. And I actually had a spare battery in the back, in the trunk. Hooked that up. That wouldn't do it. Guy pulled up in a truck, asked me if I needed a hand. I said, yeah, I'm trying to get this thing started. Tried to jump it. Nothing. So it was a starter. So $300 tow later, car's back to the house. And they put it on it was a wrecker that they had sent. And as they were lowering the car off of the flatbed, it did not look promising as far as the undercarriage of the vehicle, because it was from Arizona originally, And the vast majority of people out in Arizona don't rust-proof their vehicles. Why would you? You hardly get any rain. So people just do not rust-proof their vehicles. And of course, this Cavalier had not been rust-proofed. So the undercarriage is all rusted, which also means that no mechanic in their right mind is going to put that thing up on a lift, right? Because it's like, oh, don't want it all of a sudden to come down on you. So that is the end of the 94 Cavalier. And I don't live somewhere that there is any public transportation. If I lived in the city of Chicago, I'd be like, yeah, okay, this is going to be a pain in the ass. Yeah, I'll have to take the bus. No. In fact, you'd be probably relatively hard pressed to actually get a Lyft or an Uber out this way. So, anyway, I thought we had somebody new pop into chat. Oh, Sarah D's with us. I forgot to say hello to Sarah D, the lovely and talented Miss Sarah D is with us. So we've got a couple of our chat moderators. W Fort says, Jim, the Enterprise is 30 years old. We feel her day is over. Mike says, oh man, this is like the 1993 movie Judgment Night. Yeah, that's pretty funny. I always forget how it's Sedate Man. Isn't that it? It's Sedate Man. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Sedated Man is with us again. So there's a certain amount of pride in keeping an old vehicle running. Yeah, it was weird because I would have people actually come up and be like, oh my gosh, I drove that when I was in high school, and they're like 40 years old, like, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe the shape that car is in. Well, it's off to the junker. It's off to the wrecker, the junkyard. So, W Ford says it's time to trade in that mic for a new Bluesmobile. Yeah, how about it? So here's the thing, kids. I'm going to have to go back to working a real job. It's a discussion that's taking place with my dad. Matthew Perkins is with us in chat with a $10 Australian super chat. I think that's Australian. Says, for your Uber fund, thank you very kindly. Shazama85 is popping on in. Kevin R. Smith says one of their old high school classmates still has their car from high school. He brings it to every reunion. Anyway, so I gotta realize I don't make much money out of this. I don't. I really don't. And I'll be very, very honest. Monetization on the videos is less than it was a year ago, which is less than it was 2 years ago. I don't get enough sponsors. I don't get enough advertisers on the websites. So, unfortunately, it looks like I will have to go back to the workaday world, the Monday through Friday grind, which would mean there is no more dispatch. Not as of this moment, okay? Just because, for one, Roll for Combat is paid for a sponsorship, and I am not the sort of person to be like, yeah, 245 Trioxin says back to RV work. No, there was a lot of stress involved with that. Not necessarily in the traveling, the driving element of it. Sometimes it could be kind of hairy, depending, with weather and the other lunatics who are out on the road. But for the most part, when I would drop it off, then it was like, okay, how are you getting out of there? Because you weren't always dropping off, in LA or Denver. So you might be dropping off in the middle of nowhere. Even in California, there were places where it's like, well, it's kind of tricky to get out of. And you better drop that off and be checked out and over at the bus station or whatever by XYZ time. Otherwise, you are going to be stuck there until the next day. But yeah, that was the kind of thing that was just a lot of stress. Other thing I should mention. So I was walking back from this. It's an auto shop. I'm a mechanic. About a half a mile from the house. And I'm walking back and I'm like, damn. I'm like huffing and puffing. I was like, what the hell's going on? Now, granted, I will say it was super windy today and the wind was blowing right my face. So I had to fight the wind for the vast majority of this walk back over to the house. But I was like, damn it, man. I mean, I can tell. Not to freak anybody out, but I can tell my health has declined. So, yeah, it sucks getting old, kids. It really does. It really does. Matthew Perkins is with us, as is Melodic Method. Matthew Perkins asks, what's your vocation? So I spent the vast majority of my working life in sales. A lot of sales management. I've worked from companies, from like colleges. I've worked for some legitimate colleges, and then I worked for a not legitimate college. You might remember that story, which I think a lot of folks out there who watched that episode really enjoyed that story. But I worked for GoDaddy way back in the day when GoDaddy was fairly new and was an awesome company to work for out in Arizona. And, I've had people ask me, why the hell hasn't some game company hired me on to be their PR person or their marketing person? It's like, I don't know. I can't tell you why. Can't tell you. I don't know. But yeah, that's what I've mainly done. And then for about 6 years, I delivered vehicles around the country because I was my own boss. I would contract out, go pick something up, pick it up in, say, it depended. Sometimes it'd be Indiana. And then I started delivering Winnebagos exclusively, and you would pick those up in Iowa. So the runs were a little bit shorter, even if you were going to, say, Seattle. But it was a bit better. It was okay. But Diesel Shot is with us, and Mateo is popping on into chat. So anyway, so that is the topic. So Bradley Thorpe wants to just take our conversation a completely different direction. Says, hey, I want to ask a question. Are the D&D alternate art edition books same as the regular books? Like, is the content the same? Yes, exactly the same. They're exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the cover. That's it. That's all. Everything else is exactly the same. So there you go. That is my vocation. Melodic Method says, I can't imagine driving an RV. And I'm used to driving big cars. Well, I'll tell you, just a smaller RV. Hey, if I were somebody who had some money, which obviously I don't, and was going to kind of like travel the country, and I know there's the van life people out there, which that's a tough life. That is not an easy life, regardless of what they try to show you in their videos. Some of those people are pretty honest about stuff. But the Sprinter van RVs with the Mercedes-Benz with the diesel engine, sweet. Usually it's, some crappy Ford or Chevy that's pulling you along. I'll tell you, the Winnebagos were pretty interesting. The A-size, which are the big, long RVs, those are tricky to drive. The other ones, like a 26-foot RV that you're basically driving like a Ford pickup cab is essentially what, they're fine. They're usually like an F-250. Those are pretty easy. Those were pretty easy. Joshua. See, I was trying to pronounce the last name as I'm saying the first name. Joshua Garisco, taking a guess at that, is popping on in, said they never make it to the live streams. Well, welcome. Glad you've had an opportunity to. Pizza actually, it says, you're absolutely valuable to our hobby, Jeff. Well, thank you. I don't know how valuable, but any RPG company would be insane not to collaborate with you or hire you full on. I'll tell you what, we've talked about this a little bit in the past. Most game companies, and we're talking tabletop gaming companies too, they're looking for the young, hip, normally pretty face for their companies. They're not necessarily looking for anybody who's got any knowledge of the hobby or even minimal knowledge of the hobby. One of the reasons is because the vast majority of these game companies can't afford to pay well. Just how it is. I mean, because they're tiny. They're tiny companies. Smoking Pots is with us. Said they can honestly say they've had a beer at the Cubby Bear. They had a hot dog at Wrigley. Very nice. I can say that many, many times. Diesel Shot is hanging with us. Says, you're the handsomest face in gaming. I'll tell you what, I'm the best looking face on this channel. Lord Cots 2000 is also popping on in. Cleveland RX says, we don't want a pretty face, Jeff. We want you. Oh, I get it. I get it. And the other thing, too, that we've seen, and I've talked about this before, marketing people, they just bounce around from not every single one of them. But I have noticed, and I'm sorry if this sounds like I'm being sexist or anything like that. It's just what I have seen is that a lot of times you will see the younger women who are marketing or PR for a game company. They'll be with that game company 6 months, and then all of a sudden they're at some other game company. 6 months later, they're at a third game company. Maybe they're there for a year, and then they're off to another game company, and then they're off to be an influencer or something like that. Normally, the men that I've run across in PR and marketing, they tend to stick with the companies for quite a while. Maybe not necessarily forever, but they are there for a good amount of time. Whereas other companies, and I don't know, maybe it's my imagination, whatever. It always seems like the pretty faces that you see with the different game companies are the ones that 1 minute they're here, the next minute they're there. And essentially what ends up happening, at least for myself, is that 1 minute I've got a great relationship with a game company, and then the next minute they don't know I exist anymore. It's like, okay. Yeah. Shazama85 says, funny enough, they used to work from home doing roadside assistance for personal vehicles, including Class A, B, and C, RVs, and Sprinter vans. That's pretty wild. Diesel Shot says, yeah, you can count on one hand the number of role-playing game companies that can afford to float one person's mortgage payments off their payroll. See, the funny thing is, I don't necessarily need to make tons of money. And I don't mean that it's like, oh, I've got all these things I can fall back on. I don't mean that. I just mean I've driven a 94 Chevy Cavalier for years. I probably had that car. I had it longer than my grandfather. I got to say, I probably had that car 18 years. So I am not one of these people who yeah, look at me. I mean, I'm not one of these people who's like, all flash and dash and, oh, yeah, oh, I got to have the nicest things. And no, not at all. Not at all. Hey, my good friend from high school, Scott Weigel, is joining us tonight. So if you joined us late, the announcement I had to make was that my 94 Chevy Cavalier finally gave up the ghost. And I don't live someplace where you cannot have a car. And I'm the guy who does like all the shopping and running out for stuff and things like that. If you're fairly new to the channel, my real job in this world is taking care of my dad. That's what I do. That's essentially what I do. I keep an eye out on him. And that's not going to be the case. I got to go back to working a regular job because I cannot not afford, right? I shouldn't say, I can't not have a vehicle. And, emptying out my savings account, well, not savings, checking. Where would I think I had a savings account from? The hell is wrong with me? Yeah, I'm going to have to dip into my third money market account. W4 says, who's going to take care of your dad? Well, see, life rears its head. Life rears its ugly head. And I mean, everybody's got problems. I mean, for the most part, outside of health issues and stuff like that, it's not like I have to go. Obviously, I'm not going hungry. I got all this winter weight I'm trying to lose. That's another reason why I think I was huffing and puffing walking back from this mechanic. I got too much winter weight. Gotta try to drop that off. So Chris Lundgren says their wife still drives a 93 Toyota Paseo with over 300,000 miles on it. Still runs, but looks it. See, that's the thing. So I've already been doing research and all these other things about, cars, high mileage cars, because God forbid you try to find a used car at a decent price with less than 100,000 miles on it. And of course, it's the Toyotas, it's the Hondas, it's certain Subarus, it's certain Mazdas that you want to look for. My mom drives a 93 Toyota pickup, and I have seen YouTube videos titled The Greatest Vehicle Ever Made, and they are about the 93 Toyota pickups because it's supposedly the greatest engine ever made. Greatest ever made. Pete Strakulich is talking about IHSS is a service provider that provides services for people in need. You can work for IHSS and get paid to take care of your dad. Pete Strakulich says they do it as a side job to care for their mom. It pays most of their rent. I did not know anything about it. Timothy Gutierrez is popping on in. Welcome. Said it was a pleasure to meet you at GaryCon last year. We're all dealing with caring for our parents. Good on you for doing what you can. That should be expected. Just how I look at it. I know other people may not. Sadly, there are other people who, would be like, oh, it's an inconvenience to me. I can't do it. So, Diesel Shot says, sorry, man, rough situation all around. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I understand. But once again, I get it. Everybody has shit in their lives. There's no getting around it, right? I mean, it is life. They call it life. See, that's one of the reasons I know I'm going to go off on a tangent for a minute, but I promise then we will jump into our first look at the Old Margreves. Remember, there was no news tonight, so we're kind of in the news segment. It's just the news is about me. Chris Lengner says, in how supportive services, great way to work from home, take care of a loved one. It's a government program. Well, probably not for long. Thank you. A super chat from LJ Costanzo says, I was looking out for my dad working full-time for a couple of years. I feel the pain driving a 96 tow car that was gifted to me by a couple of my gaming group. Yeah, just like the car I was driving. I mean, my grandfather couldn't drive anymore, so he gave me the car. So, he said it's a town car. Hey, the Lincoln Town Car is another car that I see mechanics say, hey, you take care of these things, they last. You'll get a lot out of it. Yeah, so I will definitely take a peek at those. Yeah, because I figure whatever I would probably be looking at is going to probably have to be work from home sort of thing. So, yeah. But of course, as I pointed out, this is not happening immediately. Yeah. Steven from Roll for Combat just paid to be the sponsor of the show. No. Toothless is with us in chat also saying greetings from Poland. Very cool. Very nice. Very nice. All right. So anyway, so that is the announcement. Oh, I should also point out, yes, say goodbye to Gen Con. That's out. That ain't going to be happening. And funny enough, I don't know if I should even mention this. I guess I will. So it was I think it was Thursday night. I got an email from somebody. Maybe I shouldn't be revealing this, but I will. Because you know me, I've been fairly transparent about this stuff. So I get this email from someone who I had talked to at Gamehole Con, who is one of the organizers of the Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo, which you might recall I threw some news out there on an episode or two. So I get this email, and to kind of paraphrase the email, they said that they wanted to invite me because they wanted to host me as a guest. And they were like, well, before we get into the details, we just want to see if you would be interested in even attending. And they said they would like to arrange interviews with me. I would think me interviewing exhibitors would be what it would be more like, because they said you are eminently qualified or something like eminently experienced with that or whatever. And I sent the email over to, I responded to it and I said, sure, I'd be interested. I remembered the person. And I sent the email to Elliot and I said, hey, am I like seeing this correctly? Are they basically saying that, like, to me, hosting someone as a guest means that you're going to put them up in a hotel? That's what I would think. I don't necessarily think they were aiming to like pay me. But, so of course I haven't heard anything back to my response. I'm like, yeah, okay. And I'll be sitting here like, I don't know. I have no idea. But yeah, it looks, yeah, Gen Con will be, well, what can you do? What can you do? Just roll with the punches, kids. Roll with the punches. Tell you one thing that kind of bums me out, though, is the car's going to go to the wrecker. Go to the junkyard. And it's sad because it's like the only thing I have from my grandfather. I don't have anything else. I don't have any like knickknacks, or I have a couple of things from one of my grandmothers who was really into Vegas, loved Vegas. So I've got like I want to say it's a Stardust coffee mug. It's either Stardust or the Mint. And then I have an ashtray from it's the other casino. So if it's Stardust mug, it is an ashtray from the Mint. And of course, both those casinos are long, long gone. And these were probably from sometime in the 60s. Sean O'Donnell says, grab that hood ornament. I don't have a hood ornament, actually. There is no hood ornament on the Cavalier. DB is with us in chat. Welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right. So that is it for the wonderfully exciting news. So we are going to dive on in. We're going to take a first look at the Old Margreve from my friends over at Kobold Press. But first, let's talk a little bit about DriveThruRPG. You know, normally I would have had some news about stuff that's on DriveThruRPG. Don't forget, the Gaming Gang, thus the Dispatch, is affiliated with the One Bookshelf sites. So if you are going to go visit, say, I don't know, DriveThruRPG or Storyteller's Vault, Dungeon Masters Guild, Wargame Vault, what have you, by all means, stop by thegaminggang.com first, click on one of our banner ads. That way, if you happen to make a purchase, I get a small portion of that sale, and all those nickels, dimes, and quarters really do go a long way to keeping thegaminggang.com around. Should also point out, that shouldn't be a problem. The website should not be going anyplace. I think we're okay with that. Just so you know. And, of course, if you like this video, if you dig the channel, if you find the Gaming Gang to be a valuable resource, hell, if you just like what we do, you can always stop on by paypal.me/thegaminggang and make a small donation. Hell, you can buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda. You thought I was going to tell you you could buy me a car. No. You could buy me a 2-liter bottle of soda, though. Tastes like poverty. I don't know. I thought that sounded funny, at least to my head. And there are some folks out there this month who stopped on by paypal.me/thegaminggang and made not small donations, such as our friends of the show, Joshua Edwards, the Madman, and Marius Smith. Thank you kindly. It is much appreciated. Thank you for those of you out there who utilize those banner ads and or stop on by paypal.me/thegaminggang. All right, so we are going to dive on in. We're going to take a look at the Old Margreve from Kobold Press. But first, I think it's time, after all this babbling on and on and on, for a brief intermission.
It's intermission time, folks. Time out for a delicious snack in our sparkling refreshment building. Every item a fresh, appetizing taste treat.
As soon as we can, let's flick our Bix.
That's all you ever want to do, but it's against the rules. And anyway, I'm hungry.
Now that you mention it, something to munch on will go great with the flick.
Just bring plenty of popcorn, soft drinks, and candy. Yum.
Are you sure that'll last you through the entire flick?
Maybe not. So order the large size of everything and get doubles.
Oh, gosh.
It's okay. The intermission's coming up. You won't miss a thing.
Music to the ears of the hungry. The sizzle of a mouth-watering hamburger. Fresh, lean beef, done to a golden brown, couched in a soft bun, and garnished to taste. Man, that's hunger heaven. And you'll feel like you're heaven sent when you get one at our refreshment stand.
You want a can of Wilkins coffee?
No, give me a bottle of ginger ale.
Okay. But he would have liked the Wilkins.
We never thought it would happen. Nobody gets in or out of that town now, is that clear?
The girl just died. How do you intend to let the people know about all this?
We were asleep. They dragged us right out of the house.
Are we under martial law?
Don't talk to me or anybody else unless you got a voice print check. All hell's broke loose in town. Nobody knows what's going on.
Now look, you just can't push us around this way.
We've got to get a nuclear weapon in the air above that town.
I taking me no place. Oh, man, this isn't getting...
They started something they can't stop. The crazy. Something that inflames. Something that brutalizes. It's madness unleashed by human error. The crazy. Can they tame it before time runs out?
I'm a key man on the 50 team. A key man. I'm one of the developers of the goddamn thing.
Now, if you want me to get the job done, you get me the stuff I need, and you get it the hell in here before the morning's over.
A small town becomes a giant stockade. Evans City must be contained or leveled.
We're all concerned with Evans City, Mr. Hawks.
If we have to push the button, we just say the weapon went off.
Get me the president.
3,614 people are trapped by an unknown enemy. 5 are on the run. Can they escape the spreading fury of the crazies?
We can make it. I know it.
Stop it! They're coming, David! David, they're coming.
Move. We gotta get out of here.
Jesus, man.
And I want a weapon search for the entire town.
Watch it, Bucky!
This is exactly the kind of thing we're trying to prevent.
A lethal terror snowballs into hell.
In there!
Madness runs rampant.
We'll dope it out. Sooner or later. Sooner or later.
The crazy.
Yes, the crazies. Hey, damn it. Didn't set that up right. I went right into the little image of the Old Margreve. Yeah, the crazies. That's actually not a bad flick. And the remake they did with Timothy Oliphant is pretty good. It's pretty good, which can't usually say that about remakes or updates of George Romero films, except for The Dawn of the Dead. I thought that was really well done. Yes. Who was it? Oh, Mateo said America 2025. Whoa, Plum Island Horror is $117. I don't remember the MSRP being that high on it. Funny enough, in a news piece on tomorrow's show, I will be talking about the new print run of a war game designed by my buddy Herman Ledman, designer of the aforementioned The Plum Island Horror. Chris Leonard says, wife came and went. She was shy. She replied to Jeff in chat about working at home. I did see that. Before we move on, I do want to mention, you got to keep in mind, my father is not disabled. My father needs observation, is how it works. Otherwise, if won't use a cane, those things, I don't need that. Really? Because when you try to get up out of the chair, it's like 50-50. Is he going to take a nosedive here? Going to take a face plant? I don't need that. I could get out of bed by myself. Give me an hour or two. It's like, yeah, okay. But I mean, still fairly sharp upstairs. Says a hard time remembering the names of things. It's like, that, whatchamacallit. My brother does that too. And my father's far older than my brother. Anyway, Shazama. Why did I say Shazam? Nah, 85. Eyes, Jeff, use them properly. Look at the screen. Said, I think working from home would be the best fit. I think part of the working from home thing that you got to be careful with is that you don't work for some scam company. So DB says, yeah, still a little too much on that price. Oh, I agree with you. $117 for the Plum Island Horror. Yeah, that's too much. That is too much. I thought it was like 80. Maybe they jacked the price up. I don't know. I don't know if it's out of stock. So, all right. So Chris is also pointing out the Home Services Program run by the Illinois Department of Human Services provides services to individuals. Is he a wander risk? No, because he doesn't. It's not like he's got. He doesn't have dementia or anything like that. I mean, he's elderly. Elderly people have problems with memory and stuff like that. It's not necessarily a sign of like they used to say, like senility and things like that. No, he's in the present. He's in the past. He's in the future. Hey, speaking of that, real quick, I saw they released what they think Gene Hackman went through. Oh God. Ooh, that would not be good. That would not be good at all. All right, everybody. So tonight I am going to dive on in. We're going to take a look at the Old Margreve from my friends over at Kobold Press. This is designed for Tales of the Valiant as well as Dungeons and Dragons. The 256-page hardcover is available now. I believe it's available now. If not, you can pre-order it, and it'll be out pretty soon. But I thought it was out now. Carries an MSRP of $49.99. If you want to just grab the PDF, you can do so over at DriveThruRPG. Hey, there you go. There's our tie-in to DriveThruRPG for $24.99. Let's swing on over to the other camera, because here I've got the Old Margreve from Kobold Press. As you can see, this is in the Midgard setting. Let's take a look at the back here. The trees are always watching. For years beyond counting, the roots of the Old Margreve have grown deep and strong. Explore an ancient magical forest rife with dangers both mundane and fantastic. Deep in the shadow of its dark canopy, this deep woodland quickly claims unwary travelers who fail to follow the old ways. Brace yourself for a journey through the Old Margreve, a legendary forest with a mind for adventure. This setting guide and adventure path revitalizes the Margreve forest with new adventures, new art, and new maps, all fully compatible with any Tales of the Valiant or 5e D&D game. Then it talks about what we got inside. We're going to take a peek on in. Those of you who are sharing information in chat about various different, IHSP and stuff, thank you very kindly. I do appreciate that. The vast majority of people who are watching this video or are going to watch this video probably don't care about that stuff. So, but I have made note of it. So yes, thank you very much. So anyway, Pete Strakowitz says, hey, please look into it, Jeff. $1,200 a month to do what you're already doing is a no-brainer. Yeah, that would definitely be a no-brainer. Pete Strakowitz also says the Old Margreve is special to them next to Mirkwood, but better. I did review the previous Margreve release from Kobold Press. So first thing we're going to do, let's take a peek at the credits page. Lots of folks worked very hard to bring this to life. A lot of writers, a lot of artists all throughout. So we'll take a second there to take a peek at that. Also want to mention a couple of things before we dive, well, three things really before we dive on in. First of all, my friends over at Kobold Press were kind enough to provide me with this review copy. Neither I nor anyone else affiliated with Gaming Gang has received any other sort of compensation for me to share this coverage with you. It's important you know that. We're also not going to look at each and every page of the book, but I do want to give you a good feel for what you're going to find inside. And then lastly, there is an adventure in this. I believe it takes characters from 1st through 10th level. So if you're a player and you're hoping that your dungeon master or game master is going to pick this up, I would probably recommend when we hit that adventure portion, stop paying attention. Even though I know nothing about this, it's just simply, there's going to be some spoilers as we take a peek through. Anyway, so Shazana 85 says, I'm here for both helping and tabletop role-playing games. And Chris Leonard says, sorry about the profanity. We care more than a game. I get it. I completely understand. And I'm sure there's going to be folks out there going to be, geez, Jeff shared that on social media. I thought he was dying or something like that. It's like, well, we're all dying. Kind of like, that was clickbait. Like, no, not really. I do have an announcement that's going to, have a major effect, especially on the channel. A huge effect, most likely on the channel. Anywho, so let's jump on in. We've got the ancient forest. This is going to be an introduction here. The Margreve Forest, often called the Old Margreve by those who live or travel within it, is an ancient place already old when most of the gods were young. In time immemorial, it cradled the great spirits of nature, and its loam felt the footfalls of the old ones. As millennia passed, its roots swallowed rivers, its canopy stole the sun from vast tracts of land, and its groves crested mountains that have since weathered to hills. In that time, the Margreve Forest has changed little. Nice. So I will take a guess that to really paint the best picture of the Old Margreve is to imagine like a primordial forest. I think a lot of people, both here in the United States and in Europe, Probably not as much in Europe because there are still some areas. I know in Poland, if I remember correctly, there are some areas of woodland that is untouched and it looks exactly like it did 10,000 years ago. So I know here in the United States, most Americans think of a forest and they're like, oh, yeah, it's like walking through the forest preserve. It's like, oh, no. Oh, no. All right. So we've got the old ways, talking about the old ways. Sites of interest, dancing stones. Are any of the magic stones within the Margreve forest that are connected to the ley lines that run through the forest? Although many ley line connections and mystical crossroads are marked with a set of rune stones or standing stones, the dancing stones of the Margreve forest are quite a bit more animated and dangerous than the typical circle of stones. They are not animated often, but when they are, the dancing stones come alive and hold various forms of celebrations, ceremonies of ley line manipulation, imprisonments, even executions. So it looks like we've got some important locations of note, like Cradle Grove, Five Wagon Oak, Moondrawn Caves, Lost Hearts Copse, Hearts of the Forest, major locations like Bluebell Coaching Inn. Oh, we get a layout of the Bluebell Coaching Inn. Had a little bit of a Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay look to it. Warren Rollins is hanging with us tonight. Said, I was driving in Poland in the late 90s. There was a sign for a castle for $1 million US. He and their friend were like, oh, we got to see this. Running Old Margreve. The Old Margreve is 3/4 location, 1/4 magical creature. Its personality, will, and mindset are ancient, bordering on alien. It has perceptions and powers beyond the understanding and often beyond the notice of those who dare to enter its bounds. It nourishes itself, it defends itself, and it remembers those who have challenged it in the past. It is in many ways like any other creature, with the notable exception that it is the size of a country. Sedated Man says, maybe this is usable in Dolmenwood. I know I always want to say Dolmenwood, but it's Dolmenwood, not Domenwood. In fact, the funny thing is, I actually had, all right, let's get this out of the way because it's kind of, there we go, kind of tangled in the book there. It was funny. I actually had Gavin Norman correct me on that. I was like, oh, yeah, okay. You're the creator. I think you should know. So it looks like we've got different status levels of the Old Margreve. Some effects: friendly, unfriendly, welcoming, hostile. Got the heroes in the Margreve. So we'll have new lineages, including the Bear Folk. Fairly well known in Midgard, the Bear Folk. So this is the first time they are appearing for Tales of the Valiant, to my knowledge at least. Because I don't remember them. I remember them being in the core book. Maybe they are, and I just forgot. It is a possibility. So it looks like we've got the All-Seed, which is kind of like a centaur, but it's not the body of a horse. I believe it's the body of a deer. Looks like we've got some porcupine folk, delvers, which are reptilian. Well, no, actually, I think this is, oh, yeah, these are heritages. I was going to say anything. Any species could be a delver. Old ways, heritage. I know I've pointed this out before and I've had people disagree with me. And that is, I like the Kobold Press art. Yeah, granted, the artwork tends to be just kind of, almost like portrait style. We don't tend to get a ton of like action shots and stuff like that. But I tend to like the artwork. The artwork's always really solid, pretty uniform as well. Who was just asking what system? There we go. Chris Lundgren's asking, what system is this for? This is for Tales of the Valiant or D&D. The Sorcerer. All right, so what we got here? We have got some new... I think we've got new abilities. Or new... what do they consider these? Subclasses, thank you. So the Barbarian has the Hive Tender. The Bard gets... This says, I guess, a wildlife alignment. Clerics of the Hunt. Druids of Owls. It's kind of cool. We also have Verdance for the Druids. The Ranger gets the Griffin Scout and the Grove Warden. Yeah, I would expect Druids and Rangers to get a little more devoted to them. A Flora Sorcerer. Some changes for the Warlock, it looks like. The Courser Mage for the Wizard. Looks like we got some new spells. If you happen to recall, Tales of the Valiant does not have spell levels. It has spell circles. So, Chris Leonard asks, is Tales of the Valiant easy to run or is it complex? They actually do have a starter set coming from Steamforged Games. When it's coming out, I'm not positive. I am not positive when it's coming out. As far as Tales of the Valiant, there are 3 main books. They're not core books, though. So the Monster Vault, as well as the Player's Handbook, those are the books that you need. The Game Master's Guide, which is excellent. I have reviewed all of these books, if you are curious about them. It is probably my favorite of the modern Game Master Guides. It's really, really good. I also really like the Castle Keeper's Guide for Castles and Crusades from Troll Lord Games. It is also completely optional. So it's all optional rules, tips for the game masters. Same thing with the Game Master's Guide for Tales of the Valiant. It's 5e adjacent for the most part. Really what Tales of the Valiant was, and big long story. Of course, it goes back to the open game license fiasco, but Black Flag role-playing was what Kobold Press had announced, and of course they were going to scrub it from anything that was from the open game license was going to get scrubbed out, which is the case. I mean, it is. My opinion, the thing that I had mentioned when I did my review of the Player's Handbook is that it wasn't as different from Dungeons and Dragons as I had thought it was going to be. I thought that it was going to take a pretty wild change, or like a pretty drastic turn, I guess I'll say, away from the 5e mechanics. It is not. Although I will say, as far as the characters themselves, the player characters, they're even more powerful in my opinion, at lower levels in Tales of the Valiant than they are in D&D. So there is that super heroic aspect. What I really like about Kobold Press is their Midgard setting. Love it. I think it is excellent. Also, some of the adventures that they've released over the years are really, really good. So as far as a fantasy role-playing game, I do like Tales of the Valiant. I think it is a worthwhile game if you are looking for an epic fantasy role-playing game, a high magic role-playing game. Chris Leonard asks, is it compatible with 5.5? Close enough. It's compatible enough, to be honest. So we are into the adventures here, and these are all tied together. Let's see, let's jump back. So as I had mentioned, this is going to take us from 1st through 10th level. Wow. I'm going to say we're going way back here for this. So this is all kind of a setup, talking about the premise. So these adventures are tied together into a campaign. So that is important to keep in mind. I would take a stab that you could convert them to one-shots or sprinkle them into your own ongoing campaign fairly easily. Something else that I like about Kobold Press is, even though it's modern mechanics, because of Wolfgang Bauer, we still have kind of an old school flair with a lot of the adventures that we see. So I do like that quite a lot. Let's find the beginning of one of these adventures here. I got to say, the adventures themselves are fairly long. I mean, that adventure right there we were flipping through was about 10 pages. Blood and Thorns. For years, the children of the Briar have traded favors, secrets, and droplets of blood. A nuisance more than a menace. They're quickly ignored when their spying stops being useful. Things are changing, however. An adventurous child of the Briar named Catchweed, who long served the wiles of the Shadow Fae, has decided that enough is enough. It's time for his people to rise and become a power in the Margreve forest. The match of any hag, nymph, or skaithsid. Assembling an alliance of shambling mounds, shadows, and children of the Briar, he ambushed a traveling vampire. Yes, because there is a vampire kingdom in Midgard. Immobilizing her with a living stake made of mandrake root. Her necromantic blood provided a potent catalyst for his growing power. Dun, dun, dun. That's kind of cool looking. As you can see, the maps are pretty nice. That looked like that. I guess that was a bit shorter adventure there. Steven says, roll for combat. 10 pages is long. Damn. Well, 10 pages is long when it's 10 adventures put together in a book that's also got, new spells and subclasses, I should say, things like that. Hey, remember, studying at Hill Giant, Chief, 8 pages. Yeah, just keep that in mind. Steven says they wrote a 250,000 word adventure. These are just, relatively short endeavors here, I think. It's pretty nice. Of course, obviously enough, I will be reviewing the Old Margreve. It's like another vampire there. But the one that was kidnapped or abducted was a woman. That was not a woman or female, whatever you want to consider it. All right. Hey, there's the cover artwork from the previous Margreve book. Nice. I want to say that's Tales of the Old Margreve. So we've got the alligator turtle, bulbous violet, bull, duxt, the forest falcon, giant leech, giant mongoose publishing. Mark Hawkswell is with us. Says, anyone have experience with both the Kobold Press and the, I almost said N Publishing. It is EN Publishing bestiary. They really like flea mortals. And I would like to grab more monster manuals that improve on the basic 5e. I will say I can't help you with the EN Publishing. I've reached out to them a few times. They're just not interested in the outlet. Well, I guess, because I never hear back from them. But the Monster Vault, keeping in mind that you are going to have your traditional creatures in that, it's a big book. It's a bigger book than the Monster Manual is for new Dungeons and Dragons. And there's different takes. There are different take on the various different monsters. And then, of course, yes, Steven's going to chime in. You've got the Battle Zoo bestiaries. They're for 5e and Pathfinder, and all the monsters are award-winning. Man, he just loves to throw that award-winning stuff out. Chris Ledner said they got attacked in the Dungeons & Dragons Facebook group. Why would you belong to that? Chris, come on, you know better. Daring to ask if there are any 5.5 DMs local to me. They jumped on him for leaving to 5e, basically. Blah, blah. They just wanted to find a GM. Jeez. Do you hang out at your local game store? I personally do not. I mean, I just don't. I don't have one like real close by. I've got a couple of decent game stores, but they're, like half-hour drive away. And remember, I was driving a 1994 Chevy Cavalier that was already on its last legs for the most part. So, a half-hour drive was more like, okay, it's got to be a necessity. We got to be getting together to be gaming for me to drive that far. Would-be King of Wolves. The would-be King of Wolves is the mantle taken up by the lupine creature intent on becoming the Wolf King during the Margreve Forest Challenge of the Fang, which occurs approximately every 100 years. In Challenge of the Fang, the would-be King of Wolves was a cunning, awakened wolf who was growing his pack and influence in the forest. When the challenge became active, he ascended into a, probably spoiler. We'll skip that. So there you go. Now we get into our encountered tables, because Kobold Press likes to put some encountered tables based on challenge ratings. Sometimes we see it based on terrain, but seeing this is all about the Old Margreve, it's the Old Margreve as far as our locale and our terrain. There's Tales of the Valiant. See, even as far as the advertising, it's a stunning new take on 5e. When Black Flag role-playing, which is what Tales of the Valiant emerged from, when it was first announced, it came across as, wow, they're breaking away from Wizards of the Coast. And the funny thing is, let's be honest, that is Kobold Press's, bread and butter. They don't really do Pathfinder stuff anymore. In fact, I don't think they've done any second edition Pathfinder releases. So it made sense that they kind of shifted course. I know there's a whole story behind everything, and I've heard quite a bit of hearsay and stuff like that. I mean, it's okay. All right, here's that little rubbery glue stuff. Get rid of that. Okay, so hey, it's treated too. It's nice. Actually, it's pretty thick paper stock. Let's get rid of this one too. You know what I notice is if it's regular paper and it's supposed to be white, this like gluey stuff, this tacky stuff right there always leaves a discoloration. To be honest, I would prefer if publishers just slipped the map in like that. If it's being shipped out shrink wrapped anyway, it's not going anyplace. So it looks like this is a town. This is probably the main locale that the player characters in the adventure campaign will call home, kind of their base of operations. Yes, Zobek. That is a cool nation of Midgard. Oh, it's actually a free city of Zobek. All right, so that is a peek inside the Old Margreve from my pals over at Kobold Press. Once again, this is either out now or you can pre-order it. It's right on the horizon. It does carry an MSRP of $49.99, the 256-page hardcover, or you can grab just the PDF loan over at DriveThruRPG. Right now, it is out for $24.99. Sweet. Okay, so I should point out we are now into the Elite 8 of the Gaming Gang 2025 tabletop role-playing game March Madness, or is it? I'm sorry, it's March TTRPG Madness. Some more upsets, and then there's some favorites that I knew would still be there at this point, but it's really coming down to the nitty-gritty. So I will be revealing the final 4 on Thursday's show, and I will be giving 4 lucky viewers, live viewers, copies of the final 4 role-playing game core books in PDF. So stay tuned for that. If you tuned in late and you were kind of curious about the announcement it floated out, bad news. It looks like I am well, I should say probably. Looks like I'm going to have to go back to working full time. And that will mean the eventual end of the live shows. So, yeah. If you missed it, go back. I skipped doing the news tonight. That was the news segment. We discussed that. So, all right. Jack Hanks is popping in right at the end. Chris Leonard says they saw Mothership was holding its own. I'm trying to remember if Mothership made it to... I wonder if I'm trying to remember if it made it to the final 8, the Elite 8. There was one, because you can go back and you can see the vote totals. There was one that the difference was 1 vote. I think it was Castles and Crusades pulled off the win by a single vote. Or maybe it wasn't. Because I remember Troll Lord Games was like, they retweeted or zeeted, whatever we want to call it, the March Madness. So that round got solid number of votes there, but there was one role-playing game in this past round that lost by a single vote. It's kind of funny because if it was tied, I would have had to cast the tiebreaker. And I'm like, well, I'm glad I didn't have to do that. All righty. So, a couple other things I want to mention. The fine folks over at Pickpocket Press sent me a trio of adventures for Tales of Argosa, which you might recall I reviewed just very recently. Loved it. Loved it. If you have not checked out that review, by all means, give it a look. Because if you're looking for a kind of a low magic sword and sorcery sort of role-playing game, it ought to be on your radar big time. So I've got that, and also received the Game Master's Guide for Cthulhu by Gaslight. It's actually showed up on Saturday. It was supposed to show up today. Showed up early. I cannot show you anything in this book until the 24th. I am under embargo. So on the 24th, I will share a review. Not live, but I will share the review video. I will have it out on the 24th so that you know right off the bat, is it worth picking up or what? Of course, always keep in mind, I've run Call of Cthulhu for over 40 years, so I am partial to Chaosium Inc., and I am partial to Call of Cthulhu. But there have been a few releases where I was like, trying to remember that adventure collection, Order of the Stone. But I was like, really? Chris Leonard says they're finally reading Call of Cthulhu, the novel. Well, it's a novella, really. Read At the Mountains of Madness, actually. Call of Cthulhu is really not a great... Okay, I take that back. It's obviously a classic, but it is not a great... It's not a really well-written story. Because it's really 3 vignettes that tie together, but don't... like the first part doesn't really have a huge bunch to do with the third part outside of what drove the guy to learning more. But my recommendation, I always tell people, if you want to get a good feel for Call of Cthulhu, and this is the reason why the story is no longer in the core book. Used to always be in the core book for what, 6 editions? It always included the Call of Cthulhu. It no longer does. And I can completely understand why Chaosium Inc. wouldn't put it in the core book, because it's not really a great gauge of what a Call of Cthulhu adventure would be. What is the Dunwich Horror, which is shorter than the Call of Cthulhu, and my absolute favorite, At the Mountains of Madness. I love At the Mountains of Madness because if you understand what's being revealed, it is pretty horrific. Funny enough, I was very surprised. I was talking to, I think it was my nephew who had read it. And I said, so at the end, did you get, he's like, oh yeah, the Shogun. And it's like, no, that's not the scary part. It's what they learn. I'm not going to spoil it, even though the story is almost 100 years old. Gleeman RX says they ran Call of Cthulhu this past weekend, thanks to me turning them on to the game in the first place. Wow, really? Well, you're very welcome, because I can tell you it is an excellent role-playing game. And the funniest thing is you can go back to even adventures from the first edition and convert them super easy. I mean, on the fly for 7th edition Call of Cthulhu. One thing I will say about 7th edition Call of Cthulhu that I do not do. I know it's going to surprise some people, but I have not adopted the hard and extreme rolls. I just don't like them. I do not have advantage in my games. I don't have advantage and disadvantage in my games. And I don't use the chase rules. Because as much as some people like those chase rules, I find them to be kind of clunky and too gamified for me. Because I do theater of the mind. Vast majority of the time, the only sort of physical items that the players have are handouts. So they're usually not drawing maps. Of course, they take notes. But to me, the chase rules are too gamey. And yes, I know we are playing a role-playing game. But it almost feels like it takes, at least my players in my experience, it took them out of the moment in the role-playing game. So yes, Chris Lundgren says they picked up a book at Barnes and Noble, I think it was, for $10. Yeah, I picked up, I bought, because my niece likes, my niece likes like the 1920s and stuff like that. And I had already given her a Lovecraft collection a couple of years ago. So I'm trying to remember who it was, but it was the same sort of thing. It was a Barnes and Noble exclusive, and it was about 800 pages of short stories. $20, I think it was. It's pretty wild. So yeah, Chris Lundgren says, Call of Cthulhu, The Color Out of Space. Color Out of Space is decent. There's some aspects to it that I'll tell you one thing that Lovecraft was never good at was dialogue. That's why you don't find a lot of it in his stories. Most of it is kind of internal. Then I always joke around where it's, there are a few stories where it's like, oh, it's somebody writing down their memories of something, or, almost like their diary and that. And then it's like, oh, I can hear it at the door. Oh, the door is opening. Young son. You're like, really? Come on. It's like, Lovecraft did become a better writer as he aged. So you will find that the best Lovecraft stories tend to be the later stories from like the 30s. His earlier stuff, he kind of got out of the whole Duncian language and that, because he was really, Clark Ashton Smith was kind of accused of this too, where it was, what was, trying to remember the exact quote. It was something, this was Clark Ashton Smith, not Lovecraft, but Lovecraft sort of with languages like this. It was, if Smith could use a 10-cent word or a penny word, he would use a $1 paragraph instead. So DB also says, also not good at being not racist. Yes. That is very, very true. Although I have said in the past, not to say that he wasn't racist to his dying day, because when people get pissed when I mention this stuff, how dare you? I've gotten comments from people, how dare you say Lovecraft was racist? You don't know. Look at some of the fucking letters he wrote. Come on. And to be very honest here, and it's not as if I'm like going off on a limb here. Oh my gosh, I can't believe Jeff said Robert E. Howard was racist. So yes, Robert E. Howard was racist, and you gotta be pretty fucking racist for Robert E. Howard to tell you you're racist. Yeah. Chris Leonard asks if I heard Terry Brooks is retiring from writing. Yes, I had. Well, he said he's not giving up writing, but he is going to kind of ease away from, trying to crank a lot of stuff out. A lot of people out there dislike Terry Brooks, not necessarily personally, but they dislike his writing. They don't care for his stories. The reality is, the Sword of Shannara is like, wow. Did somebody take the Lord of the Rings and put a different book cover on it? What's going? It is. It's not an homage. I'll tell you that much. But we've talked a little bit about Terry Brooks in the past. I think he's fine. This should be a topic for another time because we're getting late. Maybe we will. Maybe we'll do a topic about fantasy literature. I don't know if people would care about that. We don't get that many people watching anyway, so it doesn't really fucking matter. I don't know. It's weird. I can't really get into, because I tend to listen to audiobooks because that allows me to be doing something else, but still, I can still stay focused enough on an audiobook to know what's going on. And then when I go to sleep at night, I have a timer on my phone and I'll play an audiobook for an hour and a half. And it's pretty amazing how often that audiobook kind of fades out as the volume drops. And then it's quieter. And it's like, yeah, I'm still up. That happens quite a bit. But it's weird because I can't get into some of the modern fantasy writers. And, for one, I don't get this whole RPG lit scene. I do not understand that at all. And I also don't understand, excuse me for the women out there, I don't get the weird jerk off material fantasy stuff. Where it's like seriously? Really? Come on. It's like the harem fantasy and nonsense like that. I don't know. But then again, it's the youth these days. There's a lot of things that I just don't understand. Human race is eventually going to die out, sadly enough. Chuck Terrell has joined us late as we're getting ready to wrap up. So Chris Leonard asks, do I remember a book series in the 80s about a D&D type of group that meets a real wizard, goes in a real fantasy world? I think I know what you're talking about. But I also, I think, like I said, I think I know what you're talking about, but I have actually never read the books or listened to audiobooks of them. But I know, I'm trying to remember, I think it's a series of 3 or 4 books. And some people really like them. Other people don't. But I bet you I could find that. I bet I could find it. Sedated Man says, what about something like Dungeon Crawler Carl? That's RPG lit, as far as I understand. I don't want to be reading or listening to a book where it's like, oh, and then I was doing this, and then I rolled a 20. It's like, what? It's like, just write. See, to me, and maybe I'm looking at the wrong stuff, but to me, if it's a game, then it's a game. If it's literature, then it should be literature. To me, I find the RPG lit stuff is just really poorly written. It almost feels like and I'm sure some of it is AI enhanced. So there is, I mean, you know, a lot of people out there don't like Stephen King. They just think Stephen King's really overrated. I don't. I'm not one of them. Because I'll tell you one thing that Stephen King can do is Stephen King can write. Yeah, Stephen King can turn a phrase. A lot of writers out there can't. And I know a lot of folks would be like, oh, well, you know, it's all, you know, bubblegum, you know, writing, horror and fantasy. And he actually writes a bit more mystery too now. But he can write. He sticks to rules. In fact, one of my favorite audiobooks of all time is On Writing by Stephen King. And it's funny, as a storyteller alone, not even as a writer, but as a storyteller, you should give that book a peek, or the audiobook a listen, because there are tricks and tips and tools in there that you could utilize in, you know, your role-playing game mastering. Kevin R. Smith says King has a BA in creative writing. Well, King taught writing in college, I want to say. In fact, when they published Carrie, he was still teaching. And then he gave up teaching to focus on writing full time. I like Stephen King. Stephen King seems like he's good people, at least, you know, relatively down to earth. And I do like his writing. I don't like all of his books. Some of his, one problem with Stephen King, not every book, but some books, is Stephen just doesn't know how to bring the story to an end. It's like, really? Come on, man. I'm 600 pages into this. There was one book I remember reading. I think it was The Needful Things, where I was about 300 pages into it. I'm like, is this thing going to get going here or what? But yes, The Stand, excellent, fantastic. One of my absolute all-time favorite books. We've talked about The Stand a few times. Chris Langren says they can never get into anything Piers Anthony. I want to say, I think I read the first 6 Xanth books, and then I read the first 2, what was it? The science fiction series where kid's an orphan, his parents were killed, and he's taken as like a slave, and then he eventually becomes this like evil warlord of the galaxy. I think I read the first couple of those. Elliot, my best friend, Elliot Miller, he was a big Piers Anthony fan. We've talked a little bit about how Piers Anthony is kind of persona non grata around anymore. So I get it. I understand. There are a lot of authors out there, a lot of science fiction, fantasy authors from 70s and 80s, even if you go back to the 60s a bit, who their female characters are relatively one note. Thank you, Steve, from Roll for Combat, Bio of a Space Tyrant. That was it. Yeah, I remember read the first 2 or 3 of that. But yeah, if you look at some, you know, Fred Saberhagen's Swords books, the first series, Book of Swords, is pretty solid. His second book I never read, but I had heard not so great things about. That was pretty interesting. Moorcock's Elric, I am a huge fan of. Moorcock's kind of an oddball a little bit in certain ways too. But I never got into a lot. Well, I got into some of the Eternal Champion books. So like Corum, Hawkmoon. I think there's another that was like a 6-book series that I read. Never got into the Jerry Cornelius stuff. Yeah, it just wasn't my thing. Empire of the East, I have never read. I don't think I've read. Funny enough, that is actually a book series, because aren't there 3 books? Isn't it a trilogy? I'm kind of up in the air if I've read it or not, because I know the premise. I know the premise of it. So, Lost Regiment series, yes, I remember reading that. And then I learned about the author, and I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I'm done with that. William Fortune, something like that. Yeah, I remember I read the first 3 of that. They were pretty solid. Harry Turtledove's alternate history books. Some are good, some not so good. Black Company series, I have not actually gotten into. I'll have to try it again. I'll have to try it again. I just, maybe I was just coming off of some Joe Abercrombie, who I absolutely love. I think maybe I was coming off Joe Abercrombie and moving right into the Black Company. And it was sort of like, hold on. Chris Lundgren says, can you separate the person from their story? Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. Give you a great example. And this is very, recent. It's in the news. Huge Neil Gaiman fan. Love Neil Gaiman's work. And I always thought that Neil Gaiman always came across as a really interesting person. Who would be super interesting to sit down and have a beer with. Right? Stephen King, same thing. Seems like kind of person to sit down and have an adult beverage would be a really fascinating discussion. And it could probably talk about just about anything. A few people like that. That's shit that he's been accused of, and it's multiple people accusing him of it. It's kind of like, I'm like, nah, I can't. I just can't. Like the next season of Sandman that comes out, probably not going to watch it. Probably not going to watch it. I can't condone that kind of stuff. And to me, now, granted, stuff that I've already read, well, I can't unread it, like Stardust, stuff like that. Which I actually like Stardust quite a bit. More of the book than the movie, but the movie's cute. The movie's fine. But I mean, I can't unread that stuff. I can't unsee that stuff. And like if I owned the books or I owned the movies, it wouldn't be like, oh, I'm burning these or anything like that. But going forward, and I know, it's accusations, it's nothing proven. But God damn, man, they're all kind of similar. And it's all stuff that was actually, I should say all. Some of this is stuff that had been exposed and covered up, which leads me to be more like, Diesel Shot says the trouble is how close what he's accused of doing is to some of the stories, raising certain questions about what isn't a fictionalization. Diesel Shot says the exposed more or less proved one of the stories about being raised in the Scientologist church. So Pete Dracklich says, hey, there's always 2 sides of the story. Hear the guy out first. I get it. I understand that. I get it. And, we live in a society where it's, now you're guilty until proven innocent if you're accused of stuff. I don't know. Usually where there's smoke, there's fire. That's all I can tell you. Very rarely do we ever get like, well, nope, those 7 massage therapists who accused this football player of whatever, yeah, they were all bullshit. No, usually not. So I don't know. Do not know. I think part of it too is, and that's certainly not a prude by any stretch of the imagination, but the fact that he had an open marriage and they were very public about that. So, and like I said, I don't know, but I can't, just like, I'll be very honest. I don't sit there and reread H.P. Lovecraft stuff. I don't sit there and reread or listen to Robert E. Howard. Have I already? Yeah. Yeah, but a lot of that, like reading Lovecraft, I mean, that was all 80s. You know, you're a teenager in high school picking up the, what were they? Fawcett pocketbooks that had the really cool, creepy covers to them. Trying to, like, there's like 5 or 6 of them. So, DB says, Oscar Wilde said, there is no such thing as a moral or an immoral book. Books are well written or badly written. DB says, but he was Oscar Wilde. Yeah. See, now something like that, I feel very, well, not like it's like, oh my God, I stay up at night. I feel bad for Oscar Wilde. The love that shall not, what was it? The love that shall not be named. Isn't that what they called it back in England? Or like the love that shall not be spoken. It's like, come on, man. Like, get real. Chris Lundgren's talking about James Clavell. Yes, Shogun was excellent. That was really well done. I've encountered some people who are like, oh, I didn't like that at all. Just not enough about the white guy. It's like, yeah, okay. It's like, geez, really? Oh, yeah. So we're talking about Roman Polanski. Yeah, I know. But once again, it's one of these situations where the things that were acceptable or borderline acceptable at one point in time nowadays are like, oh, absolutely not. You're going to jail. I still kind of have a hard time with that too. But hey, I understand everyone is human. Everybody has their faults. Everybody's got their own weird kinks and stuff like that. Or lack of any, which would also be fucking weird. Chris Leonard asks, why don't I like the Narnia books? I don't like, it's not even religious overtones. I mean, the Catholic religion is just way too baked into those stories. That's why I don't care for them. Now, I'm not telling people not to read them. I'm not saying that at all. But, yeah, just as a non-believer. So, I was raised Catholic, so keep that in mind. That's probably got a few things to do with my non-belief. So, Jack Hank says he was Anglican. Okay, same difference. So, I guess we'll say the hardwiring of Christianity into the books is not. It'd be the same thing if there was like a fantasy series that was really steeped in the Quran. I probably wouldn't. I'd be like, Chris Lundgren says, I thought he was Lutheran. I mean, once again, yeah, me saying Catholic, that's way off because he was a Protestant of some sort. Chris Lundgren says Tolkien has Christianity in it as well, but not as obvious. Once again, I'm not telling people what to read, what to believe, who to like, who not to like. Yeah, I'm not saying that at all. And like I said, it is, as far as people's bad behavior and their work, be it like film or music or like, their fiction or nonfiction, whatever. Yeah, it is. If you were sitting there and you're like, well, I'm not going to watch anything or listen to anything or read anything from anybody who's got any sort of like bad PR at any point, you're going to be pretty bored. You really are. So, and then a lot of times the people who are like supposedly, they're such a wonderful person. Then all of a sudden it turns out that they're shit heels. You're like, oh, great. Shazam85 says Tolkien had a great take on C.S. Lewis, basically copied the Bible and even some of Tolkien's work. And they were friends, yes. In fact, I thought they wrote a lot of letters back and forth about Christianity. So Chris Lundgren says, I'm not offended, Jeff. It's all point of view. I'm surprised the Narnia movies were done by Disney if they are Christian novels. Never saw it in the books until I was an adult. So you have a point. Yeah, I mean, but then again, there's stuff like, I've never read or watched. Well, okay, I take that back. I saw two of the Harry Potter movies. And I've read none of the books, listened to none of the audiobooks. I mean, I know the premise. I want to say, I think I saw the first and I saw the third Harry Potter movies. And that was only because my nephew was a little kid. And I just happened to be there and it was on. So I wasn't like, oh, you guys are going to watch Harry Potter tonight? Stovetop stuffing. If you're into Harry Potter, I have no beef with that. That's fine. Yeah, the author's not exactly my favorite person in the world, but whatever. What's good? She's entitled to her opinion on stuff. I get it. I understand that. But yeah, that just wasn't my bag of tricks. It's okay if you enjoy it. It's okay if you enjoy the hell out of it. I'll give a great example too, like Disney. Disney's fine. Would I go too far out of my way to see like a Disney movie and stuff like that? Yes. I understand. We're talking Marvel. We're talking Star Wars and stuff like that. And yes, I have seen most of the Marvel movies. I haven't seen the most recent ones because I have heard just very negative things about them. I'll get around to it, I'm sure. It's like I'll get around to watching the Daredevil series once all the episodes have been released. But yeah, I have friends who are huge into Disney. I mean, they absolutely love Disney. Yeah, okay. It's fine. If that's your bag of tricks, that's cool. That's fine. Once again, we talked about this before, and I am going to wrap up after this thought. As long as nobody gets an eye poked out and nobody has their feelings crushed, whatever you enjoy it. That's cool. That's fine. Dresden Files. I tried to get into Dresden Files and I just couldn't. But I do have to say that I am really not an urban fantasy guy. So that is not really my thing. I'll tell you who really does like the Dresden Files is my best friend, Elliot. He's a big Dresden Files fan. In fact, he really likes the audiobooks because if I remember correctly, they're narrated by James Marston. So there is that. All righty. Cold War Tuesday popped on in. Very cool. Welcome aboard. Yes, they are catching the tail end, the very tail end. So tomorrow, what should we do? What shall we do? I'll tell you what. I do not believe this is the nudity edition of Cult Divinity Lost. Because I thought on the cover, they're topless, which they are not topless here. And I mean, I don't think it's, if it was, that it would be graphic anyway. So on tomorrow's show, we're going to dive on in and take a live look at Cult Divinity Lost from, well, this is actually through Modifius Entertainment is how this is released, but that is not who sent this to me. It's the, what is it, Helmgast? If I remember right, I think it's Helmgast. So, Pete Stracklich, Gleeman RX says nudity edition. Yeah, that there's nudity in the artwork. I have been told that some editions of the Dark Eye has like topless images in it. But I don't know, not the one I saw. Not that it mattered either way. So Dan Webb has popped on in the chat too. Good to see you. Overkill Joe 1. I believe this might be a first time visit live with us in chat. Is chimed on in and says, looks like that's a hefty book. It is. It is actually pretty hefty. So once again, thanks to our friends over at Kobold Press for sending along the Old Margreve. I will have a review of that in the not too distant future. In fact, you know, funny enough, I was going to shoot reviews this weekend and spent most of the weekend trying to change the starter on the car. And then it got to the point where it's like, no, this is not going to be happening. And there's, as I pointed out, way too much rust on the undercarriage. So no mechanic would be putting that up on the lift. Yeah. All righty. Well, it is what it is, right? So big thank you to our friends over at Kobold Press. Let's not forget that the Dispatch is sponsored by our pals over at Roll for Combat. Yes, Steven's been hanging out in chat with us this evening. And their Living Legends Kickstarter. So take a peek at that. It is for both Pathfinder 2nd edition as well as Dungeons and Dragons. Comes in two flavors. Two flavors of game book. Thank you very much for watching. If you watch live, thanks for stopping by. If you watched live and took part in chat, tip of the cap to you. Much appreciated, because not only are you keeping me company, you're keeping each other company while I'm babbling on about whatever nonsense is going on in life, or taking a first look at a game or a game book. So thank you for that. Of course, I know a lot of folks out there, you don't have an opportunity to watch live. Doesn't matter if you're watching live or on Memorex. Really do appreciate you taking time out to watch any of the over 2,100 videos here on the Gaming Gang channel. If you like the video, please give it a quick thumbs up. If you have a moment, please try to appease the YouTube algorithm gods by leaving a comment on the video. And of course, subscribe to the channel. And if you haven't, please do so. And if you do subscribe, don't forget, ring that bell. It's not only going to let you know when the Dispatch least for right now, streams Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evenings at 7 p.m. Central. We'll also let you know about other videos, such as my recent review of Tales of Argosa from Pickpocket Press. If you have not checked this out and you're into sword and sorcery, you need to take a peek at that review. I think so. All right, everybody, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, evening, whatever time of day it is in your neck of the woods. I'm Jeff McAleer. Thanks for watching, and I certainly hope all of you get to enjoy plenty of great gaming with your gang.